So hey everybody, let's get started. So today I invited you all here to create a moment for some of my favorite girlies to reflect on hashtag Trans Girl Power, what is Rose Initiative is all about. And what it has looked through other generations. I think it's really important for us all to get together and really have a time with community and talk and chat. Hopefully, this can be a conversation, easy flowing, just another day with the girls at brunch and who just have a conversation. So to get this started, let's go around and say our names, our pronouns, where we call home, and you can pass it to the next person after that. So I guess I'll start. My name is Melanie Jackson, pronouns she, her, hers. I'm in Seattle, Washington, on unceded Duwamish land, and I'll pass it to Amayas.
Hey, it's Amayas, they, them, theirs pronouns. Your girlie is in Denver, also known as Arapaho, Cheyenne, Ute land. Yeah, girlie's so excited for today. Kathy.
Aloha, everyone. Thanks for having me. I'm Kathy Kapua. I use she, her pronouns. I'm a Native Hawaiian trans woman located here on my family's land in Oahu, Hawaii, where I was born and raised. Can I pass it off to Ainga Tupu?
Thanks, sis, for pronouncing my name right. I love it. Talofa, good afternoon. Olo ingoa o Angayo Tupu Vienna. My name is Angayo Tupu Vienna. I use the Samoan feminine pronouns sunga, also she, her. I also live on the unceded traditional lands of the Duwamish people, also the Coast Salish people, the Muckleshoot people, which is now occupied by the city of Kent in Washington. I want to honor their elders, their people, past and present, and the land itself. I'm originally from the village of Pangpango in Samoa Sae, which is now occupied by the U.S. under the name American Samoa. I'm going to pass it to Raquel.
Hi, everyone. My name is Raquel Willis, pronouns she, her. I am currently in Brooklyn, New York, or Lenape land, and I am originally from Augusta, Georgia. So I consider the South of the U.S. my home, but of course, anywhere my mama is or anywhere my girls are. So I got a lot of homes. It's expansive over here.
Yes. Thank you all for sharing. I love hearing all the places that we have become to call home. We also know that for so many of us, we may not be starting off in a loving and understanding and accepting home. For many trans girls, there's been journeys towards finding homes, community, and really choosing each other's family. This journey often manifests into trans girl power. I would love to hear from all y'all. Share examples of trans girl power and what that may look like to you throughout the generations.
Yeah, I don't mind starting. Trans girl power through the ages. Well, it's so interesting when I think about our history as a trans movement and various trans movements. I think about how we have all these figures that we lift up their names, and rightly so, like Sylvia Rivera and Marsha P. Johnson, and even Miss Major, right, who couldn't be with us today. When they got their start, honey, they were young, and young trans people, young trans girls in particular, have been reminding so many of us about that, particularly this year with all the anti-trans legislation. So I think about how trans girl power gave us the movement that we have now, honey. And I also just think about all of the trans girl power that existed even before we had the words trans, or we were using different terms to describe ourselves. And I know it'll continue. And I know that, I got a lot of humility around this label of trans. And I know future generations, even after us, they may be coming up with something more expansive and more beautiful and more accurate to use for themselves as well. And so I'm excited to see that power continue.
Yes. Um, I I would say for me, examples of trans power was growing up in Samoa and seeing myself reflected in the trans women or Fa'afine folks at church, in school. They were my teachers. They were my high school teachers, and they told me, you got to go to this school to get your hormones, go to Dr. Rodwell down the street. And they taught me, gave me that, I guess, home training when I was away from home, right? To like put me, put me in line and make sure I was like, doing all of the things that, and I wasn't getting too big in my head, as as young trans people do when they're discovering themselves. I see a lot of trans power in, like Raquel said, the trans folks who didn't use trans right before us, right? All of the different cultural identities that have existed since time immemorial. And I also want to acknowledge that, yeah, language isn't important, just because it doesn't mean we were never here, right? We've always been here. And I also want to like share all of the examples of trans power in this room. So thank you.
Thank you, Raquel and Angatupu, for sharing about what trans girl power means to us. And I think for myself, I can resonate with everything y'all are saying. Things have changed so quickly, and the way how we view our ancestors also changed, but we also honor them in such ways, right? We have certain people in our local Hawaii islands, our trans women led the way for us, and folks are not singing their prayers and their songs of love. Back in the 60s, when Stonewall riots were happening, we also had our own fights here in Chinatown, and our elder trans women went into a club similarly where they could be themselves. There were shows, there were elaborate showgirls that were there, and that was a safe space for people to exist. And I say this because many of them no longer are with us, and I really want to honor them in this way, that when they went out onto the street, there were a lot of military folks that were attacking them and putting them in harm's way, and a lot of bodies were found in the sugarcane fields, were buried and burned, and our trans women were disappearing. So that our Honolulu Police Department thought they were doing a good thing by clocking our tea, pretty much. They would ask our trans women, if you came out in cross-dress, you had to wear a big red ribbon that says, "I am a boy," so that the guys that were picking us up would know and would be able to identify us for whatever reasons, right? So we had to clock our tea just so we could be safe. They got rid of that real quick because they were causing more harm. But our trans women on our streets of Hawaii really paved the way by advocating for themselves and for us. They paved the way for the laws to protect us a little bit more. It got better not until like 2017, but in that time, that was all we knew. So I honor them in so many ways, and they become like our ancestors, our trans sisters, rightfully so. And I also found elders, aunts and elder sisters, and my queen mother really took me under their wing and showed me what it was to be not only a trans girl, but also to be a woman, and how to navigate society and how to be in relationships. And it was always so difficult because I could not talk to other members of my biological family. So my chosen family really gave me my strength as a trans girl. I lift them up now. Thank you.
I think for me, I mean, of course, my past generations, they are my ancestors as well. And they gave me everything that I have right now. And, like Sylvia and Marcia were not only just trans women, but they were also figuring out their own gender identity and their own gender expression and like all of these things. And that's why they didn't care what they wore. And that's given me the ability to do so. And not only them, but the people that haven't had their name out there, like Raquel was saying, like haven't had their voice completely heard, they still did something for me. And for everyone here. But not only that, like me being myself and the girlies next to me being themselves, walking down the street, strutting, serving face, serving body, serving everything that we can, that is trans girl power. That's trans feminine power. That is the beauty and everything that we give. Like, I think for me, as a trans femme, like I'm seen so differently by every single person on this planet, on this world. And, you know, I walk in spaces so differently than so many other people can. And that's the beauty in it, though. And that's the beauty in me just being able to just be. And I don't allow that fear to hold me back. And that is trans girl power. Being a girly, no matter where I am, in the mediocre moments, in the moments that I'm just me in the grocery store line. Like, honey, I'm being myself. I'm grabbing my Snickers bar, screaming to the girlies, saying, hey, how are you, doll? Da, 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 going ham, because that is trans girl power, holding yourself to the standard that you need and that you want, because no one else can take that from you. Like, yes, there's always going to be, you know, trans violence. There's always going to be people that hate on me. There's always, and other trans girlies, but I can't let that stop me from being myself. And so being yourself is like top tier trans girl power, because who else are you going to be? So yeah, thank you.
Thank you, y'all, all for sharing these amazing examples on on like how love and like this the power of love and how being supported really goes a long way, both within ourselves and within the community. Question for Amaya and Kathy: can you speak about the importance of feeling affirmed either at home or at school? And for the girls who do not feel that support, how can they still grow into their own power?
Yeah, I think honestly, going through high school was so weird because I went through so many journeys. And, you know, I was very lucky at the fact that most of my teachers were very there with my pronouns, were very there for like just trying to understand who I am. And so I think the importance of that was huge, because if I didn't have those teachers, if I didn't have teachers to even like talk to about these things, um, was just, I mean, like I wouldn't know what to do, honestly. And so I think being able to find people, or not even just teachers, but people in general who can affirm you, can talk to you about these things that you feel safe with, are definitely like helped me so much. And I think that would help a lot of other people too, because you're on a constant journey and it never stops. Every day is a different day. And like sometimes you're going to feel one thing and the next you're going to feel another. And I think it's always important to make sure that you have people there to like help you. And even if you don't, be there for yourself. Um, and I think the girlies that don't feel that support, because I didn't feel that a lot from my peers, I think was just figuring it out myself, trying all the things that I wanted to try without questions or answers for myself. Like when I wanted to wear heels, honey, I kept them in my closet for like months because I was scared of wearing them, not only in front of my mom, but like in front of people. I was like, how do I do this? And it finally took me that one time to put on a pair of heels and like go out in public and just feel that power, that it was like, I can do this. And I was like, and I don't need anyone else to tell me what I can and can't do. I don't need anyone else to tell me what I can and cannot wear, because I'm going to do it for myself, because no one else can make me feel the same way that I can make myself feel. And I think that was helped me grow into my power. It's just like, if I wanted something, trying to find the way to do it. And I know that there's so many, you know, people that don't have supportive families, um, and or even like just supportive spaces. Like you can't go out and buy a dress. I know there's so many people that can't do those things. And I think in those moments, when I didn't feel like I could do those things, where I felt like I couldn't put on lipstick, it was like, okay, well, there's hope. After this time, I can do it. Once I move, I can do it. And I think having like a goal set for yourself and like looking towards the future that like you don't have right now, like that definitely helped me and could help you grow into the power that you already have, but you just need to find.
Thank you, Amayas. I just wanted to share, last night I was watching WW84, Wonder Woman, again, because I just love it. I'm a Marvel and DC fanatic. And she says something at the beginning, and she says, sometimes you cannot see what you are learning until you come out on the other side. And I resonated so well with that, because similarly, when I was in my home and in school, I didn't have support. There was no other trans folks. There were gay guys, there were lesbian women. I could kick it with them, but I had my own bunch, my own crew, and it was all cisgendered heterosexual women. So I hung out with them until after high school. And when I came out, of the house, I started to work and earn my own money. I could buy my own clothes. I could do things for myself, and it was empowering. When I found my fashion, I already was flamboyant and beautiful on the inside and out. I would find things to emphasize that, right? So the first time I bought my first Iggy, that my wig, that my unit, that was like life for me. For me, that gave me all the power. When I got makeup, and I was probably cheapy makeup or stuff that I could buy at the drugstore, it gave me power. But I didn't have places to share this with. Who could I share my genuine, authentic self with, right? So I actually found it in the club scene. I was 18 years old. I went into the club scene. I found the street. I also found my chosen family, which I didn't realize they would be my forever family. But at that time, they guided me. I saw who I wanted to be, what I wanted to be like, who the elders that stood before me that were beautiful, body, pageant, everything, hair, nails, makeup, and that's what I lived for. So I found inspiration through them. I didn't have YouTube or Google or other places to search how to be and how to tuck things and how to make things look pretty or whatever. I learned from my folks on the streets. Um, I'll just share a really quick story. On the streets also led me to sex work, also led me to street economics, like selling drugs. And it was all because I was trying to get coins to get my surgeries. So when I got arrested, because I was a horrible drug dealer, I got arrested 3 months later. I was 19 years old, went to prison, and they were going to throw me away for 105 years as I was just trying to figure out how to exist and how to be a woman and what have you. The courts gave me a youthful offender act allowing me 8 years maximum. They crushed all my time down to 8 years. I came out after 4 years of being in a men's prison, which I also learned a lot from in the men's prison. Came back out, and then my family learned a lot. My family learned how to accept me and realize that this part of me was not going away. This part of me was exactly who I was and actually was the same person. So I gained my family's love after that. But what I also did when I came out was realize my voice. I had a story to tell that I could help guide other people who may also be looking for where they belong and where they can exist. So that's when I started volunteering at the trans-led program, Kulia Namamo. I volunteered there, and then I got a job there. I was there for 3 years, and then I eventually went to the HIV/AIDS organization, where we eventually started a trans program also. I think that's where I found that everybody's journey has potholes, and some of our potholes look the same. If I can help cover up some or let people know what the potholes are, they may be able to avoid the same ones that I made so that they can be a little bit stronger and happier. And the biggest claim to fame I want to say is in 2017, we changed the laws for health insurance to cover gender affirming care here in Hawaii. So girls can get their top surgery, their facial feminization, their gender affirming surgery, without having to do street economics and raising coins. Survival is survival no matter how you do it, but we should be able to feel comfortable in our skin at the least bare basic minimum. And I feel like that healthcare should be covering that. So that's what's happening in Hawaii now. Thank you.
Yes to all that. Thank you so much, Kathy, for sharing this and highlighting how important it is to find your home and finding your people is. And this speaks to how many girls need to make something out of nothing and how we always find a way and how resilient we are. Raquel, where can you find? Sorry, sorry. Raquel, where can we find affirmation in our journeys when we don't have the material resources? What is even possible for the girls these days?
Wow, yeah, that's a big question. Affirmation, I think that what I've experienced in terms of finding affirmation before I could kind of access things or before I even knew, how to go about the type of gender experience I needed. I really look toward media. And when I say media, I mean that like books and, back when they used to upload like all the like TV shows and movies on like YouTube and like nobody would get arrested for it. Like you could just like find whatever you wanted to find and on different blogs and stuff. I would search out like the media that had at least glimpses of like an experience similar to mine. And that was where I started to find affirmation before I had more of the material resources. So I think that that's so important. But I always think that circumventing like the people who tell you you can't be who you're supposed to be, or the institutions, whether it's like a school or whatever, who tell you you're not supposed to be, always have that like plan B route of like where you can go for that affirmation, because it's not the same for us as it is, I think, for other folks, right? Cis folks can often count on at least having that teacher or administrator or person in your place of worship or the neighbor or the auntie or like whoever in your like bio fam that they can lean on for like advice, whatever. But my experience, and I think the experience of a lot of trans folks, is like that often isn't the case. And so we often have to do research just to find those folks and those spaces that will be supportive for us. But I do believe in almost every community around, and you'd be surprised, even in rural communities, there are trans folks, there are queer folks out there who are waiting to welcome you. And so don't be afraid to ask questions to Google or whoever else. And look for those spaces, because that's so important. When I was coming up in Augusta, Georgia, in the mid 2000s, like I had this idea, like I was like, I'm gonna move away from the South, and then be in like one of the queer meccas like New York or San Francisco. That did not happen, by the way, because my parents could not afford me going off to college that far. So I stayed in Georgia, but I did look up like LGBT resource centers on the college campus I was going to, or like community groups, and try to find them there, or looking through like Facebook groups locally, different things like that. And so I think that is very helpful in trying to find connections to those material resources, because we always need, no matter what age you are, those folks who have kind of tread that path before. Because in community, for us, it's like that word of mouth is our salvation. Right. And so you got to find that the girls or that person who can get you the hookup with whatever medication you may need or service you may need, those kind of things. So I think those are important. But I also just like to underscore that we live in a time now where we're lucky we have this infrastructure of like trans-led groups and initiatives and organizations, especially ones of color or led by trans women and trans femmes, that are trying to build out a bit of a network. And so don't be afraid to go into those spaces, because folks are waiting to help you with those things. So those are some of the like tips, but I don't want to undercount or invalidate the fact that it is hard, right? It is hard trying to figure out where to go or what your path is, but seeking community was always the first step in my journey to getting to the next step that I needed to be.
Thank you. Just for me to see community was one of my first steps. And I'm so thankful that I found it in the city I was living in at the time, in Tacoma, that a queer youth center. And that is, from there, I blossomed. Like, being in community, it really does help. And it shows you what you can be and who you can be and where you can go. And just seeing just the representation, it matters. For so much of us, our experiences is projected to be tied to violence and against our bodies and people. Angaya Tapu. Hope I said that right. Can you share what can help help trans girls of color stepping into the world and authentically amidst the fear and risk of violence? Like, what can they do, and what tips and tricks do you have for them?
The tips and tricks. um, I want. Sorry. Oh, you give me the hard questions. I'm kidding. I do want to add that, like Kathy spoke about Kulianamamo, and it was around. I got to Hawaii, and Kulianamamo was like where the girls were, and it was nice to feel affirmed there and get my little stipend, so $25 for taking the survey, and just being around the girls. And that's something I feel like for a lot of us who have these cultural identities, it's a privilege, right? Because we have these connections to our elders, to our identity. It's, that it hasn't been erased fully, like many other cultures. So I'm very grateful to have that connection, but I do want to name that it is, a privilege for a lot of us. And when, the descendant of stolen people are still trying to find, those connections and to rebuild those connections. I would say the youth are doing a lot more, are being innovative around the ways they live their lives authentically, especially in a time of increased violence. And I feel like we're learning as elders, whatever, as I'm only 35. We're learning a lot from young people, and I would say for trans girls of color, yes, reach out to those organizations where the girls are, being employed and, are using their relationships to, make change. But also know that it's a different world now where we're not showing up at organizations, knocking on their door. Like, they are out there, meeting people where they are. Like, when I think about folks like Maddie Mooney at Swedish, who was at Ingersoll Gender Center, who is on Facebook, constantly, just reading through comments and making sure the girls are getting, Black trans folks, Black trans women and femmes are getting the support they need. And I also think just relying on the truth that regardless of and I'm thinking a lot about young Fa'afine who are disconnected from the island. And they write me and they tell me do you think I should use this term Fa'afine when I don't have a connection to my culture, right? And I'm regardless of what, where you are in this world, and whether you have your parents that are foster parents, that's something no one can take away from you. And for you, your trans identity is something that's a part of you, and no one can ever take that away from you. And yeah, I feel I'm the tips and tricks are missing me right now, but I could come back to that question.
That is totally fine. I just wanted to highlight, Kathy said, trans women, trans femmes, travel impacts, we are stronger together, which is so true.
Can I add, everything you shared, Anya Tupu, is perfect and on point, and I just appreciate just you and Kathy's vulnerability just around finding community, and also just the importance of culture in that too, because I think we always lose that when we talk about being trans people growing into ourselves. We often lose the other cultural pieces, and it's well, I'm just trans now, honey, and it's no, I'm trans and Black, or Filipinx, or Native Hawaiian, or Indigenous, or whatever, Latinx, and so that's so important And I appreciate y'all sharing that. And the other thing I would add too, kind of in that same lane, is like, one thing I wish when I was younger, because I just turned 30, so I'm in that same kind of Yelder club, right? But I only just now am starting to feel confident, like in everything else, right? It was like I was confident on the gender tip when I was a little bit younger, like at least early 20s. I wouldn't say in my teen years. But it was like everything else was such a struggle for me to be confident in. And like that's the opportunity that I think younger trans folks have now, is like y'all are starting to get the like gender thing on lock sooner so that you can be freed up to worry about these other things too, right? Because beyond being trans or non-binary or any kind of gender expansive, it's like, do you want to like be a ballerina girl or a ballerina X? I don't even know what the term is now, right? We're gonna come up with that. But right, if you want to dance, be confident in that, right? Because the gender doesn't have to hold you back anymore. That was one thing I wish I could have done when I was younger, if I didn't have all these gender expectations. And even on the tip of like self-defense, right? Like the girl should be able to feel strong, right? And it not be like dysphoric to be active or be in sports and different things like that, right? So like, what are those passions and things that you want to go for? Continue to like deepen that too. And I think that that can also be a space of affirmation and authenticity.
Yes to all of that. Honestly, I feel so much of that because I didn't do half of the things that I wish I could have done when I was younger. Like playing volleyball. I am so pressed about this because I would have loved to play volleyball. And like I didn't get to because I didn't share myself sooner, but also I just didn't feel comfortable enough. And I'm so lucky, like I'm 20, I just turned 20 in April. And I'm at a point now that I'm like so into just being like fully, completely myself. Like I need to find a queer volleyball team, trans volleyball team. It's coming up. I will find it for a girly. I want my pigtails in, live my little fantasia. But like, I think that is so true, Raquel. You gave it all. Like literally just doing everything that you want to do without questions or answers. Like I think that will give you so much affirmation and so much, tea for yourself. And yes, I will come. I will come to Little Hawaii. Yes, send me a trip. Um, but yeah, like I wish I could have done those things, and I'm so glad and like happy that so many people I know have been able things like once I was a senior, it was like at that point it was like, girl, I can't do nothing with my life, with volleyball and all the sports and things, like going to the pool. Like I love going to the pool now, like as an adult and as a person, but like I hated going before because I didn't understand myself. And I wasn't confident in who I was, and I was scared to show myself. And like for me, my body was such like a mismatched part of myself. So it was like, I can't do these things. But now because I've just like let go of all these other people's ideas of who I am, I'm finally able to do those things. And I think that definitely helps in so many ways. Once you let go of like all these ideas and things that you have to be or you have to look like, or like trans people don't do these things, it's like, no, you want to do those things, so do them. And that like will give you so much strength into going into so many other things in your life.
Thank you all for sharing your truth, the real truth, and that so many of us know already. And it feels good to hear you talk about it, even like this time of like uncertainty, that we're still living our lives to the fullest. This question is kind of targeted to Raquel and Kathy, but any can answer. Um, can you talk about the roots of pride and where we find pride today? Do you feel the true meaning of pride is lost today behind all the capitalistic propaganda and commercialism?
Oh, geez, Kathy, you gonna force me to go? Yeah, child, I feel like I talk about this a lot, but I definitely do. At its core, pride is about honoring our ancestors, right? And honoring the fact that the Stonewall riots was a queer militant uprising against the New York Police Department. So that means that Black and brown, trans and gender nonconforming folks, the drag queens, the butch lesbians, the sex workers, the folks living on the street, the young folks at that time were carrying the banner of abolition, of defunding these folks, right? Decades before we had all these slogans around it and everything else, right? Like, I'm in awe of the fact that they knew what intersectionality was before it was coined, honey, and they knew what was going to be truly the tip that would liberate us. And so, absolutely, our movement was co-opted by a very white, cis homo normative, patriarchal, capitalist agenda, because that is what happens when you kind of have this idea that if you have any kind of marginalization or marginalized identity, that you have this pure perspective. And that's not true. That's not possible. So even in queer and trans spaces, these other systems of oppression like white supremacy and classism and more can continue to reign supreme, right? Because people will stop being vigilant. And so, I do think that it was a vast misstep for there to be such a focus on professionalizing the queer and trans community, on marriage equality, and in the aim of assimilation into this larger cis hetero culture, when even now cis lesbians, gays, bisexuals are not even protected. We still need the Equality Acts, which, okay, let's not put all our faith in a government that continues to ignore us, but they still aren't even protected outside of marriage equality. They still can be fired in many states, right? There's still so much inequality in housing and healthcare and education, even for the cis folks in our community. So yeah, absolutely. I think that what we're doing now and what the younger generations are doing now, especially Black and brown, trans, queer, gender nonconforming, non-binary folks, we're righting the wrongs of that great sin that has continuously happened in our community.
So beautifully said. Thank you, Raquel, for really taking us back and reminding us of some of the hurt and trauma that comes from these events we call Pride today. I feel also I wanted to just add on, I did take notes that, especially here in Hawaii, I'm not sure other places, but the Pride here was always gay, cis, white guys. And they party and they drink and they do pool parties and they walk around enjoying with rainbow flags, right? There was never a space for our trans folks. I never really saw myself in those pride parades and those events. When I started to do trans advocacy work and try to bring our community together, folks are like, we need to put the T back in LGBT. And I was like, but that's not our space. That space has never been for us. That space was never celebrating our lives. We celebrate doing November for, TDOR, Trans Day of Remembrance. But I also wanted to say that the trans folks that I did see in the Pride parades and the other celebrations during the month of June were usually are trans folks who engage in pageantry or drag entertainment. And when they have a crown on their head, they get to sit in a convertible and wave. And I'm like, the next year they won't come back. Like they literally only do it because they're promoting their pageant and their crown. So I think several years ago, we started to do things a little different. We wanted to bring some trans pride back in here. And I think this is the first time our Hawaii Pride ever had so much trans visibility. And I just told folks, don't even dress up. Just come as you are, because Pride is how you are. And Pride is how you feel comfortable. And Pride is how you feel visible. Some of us, we dressed up in showgirl attire. But then the years after that, we realized, no, we don't need to put on a show for you all. We just want to let you all know that this is us. We're here too. So folks are looking at our part of the parade, which was a huge section of just men, women, and non-binary folks walking. Like, you couldn't tell we were trans because you weren't looking at our IGs. You just were acknowledging that we were holding our flags and we were celebrating Pride. I think it's evolved a little bit since then. I think our younger folks have really taken charge and really held folks accountable. And I'm so excited that we're hearing how young leadership, especially here in Hawaii, is trying to do things more inclusively and asking folks what they want to do. And not all trans folks have the access to go to alcohol serving places, right? So they're creating younger spaces too, where I thought, wow, that's kind of brilliant that they created online spaces or living room spaces for trans youth to just enjoy and have a barbecue and just enjoy each other. And I think that was important. There's so many ways, but then I really come back to that the fact that we celebrate in June is for a certain reason. And the things that we see now is not necessarily what I'm seeing, what we should be celebrating. We should be honoring our ancestors and our transcestors. We should be living our truth and our pride every single day. But I feel like the celebrations have kind of taken a twist and turn, and it is about corporate America and a lot of capitalistic donations and money. Like, everything is driven around money. I think in Hawaii, we now accept our Gay Pride Parade, our Honolulu Pride Parade now accepts donations and sponsors from alcohol companies. So now the events become all alcoholic, and folks who aren't able to drink alcohol aren't able to come into the event. So I feel like we're changing every single time, and I'm so glad that we have leadership, some trans and some young leaders in Hawaii really taking a stand and saying that's not what we're celebrating. We're celebrating it differently this year. So yeah, I think we really need to honor the voices of our ancestors, but we also make space for our young folks to lead us differently and learn from our mistakes. Because I think in our time, we kind of went where the money was. We did what we needed to do to survive. And now we know that that was probably detrimental to our cause in some spaces. So yeah, thank you.
Yeah, and thank you both for sharing. And I also think, like, even when we do try to create a space where we, want to foster the true spirit of pride, that it's all of that is lost behind all of the transphobia that we face within our own community as well, right? And it's something that, so last year, speaking from an experience, last year, a group of brilliant, rad, Black and brown trans organizers, queer organizers, dreamed of this event called Taking Black Pride, right? Taking Back Pride, but with an L, Taking Black Pride. And it was, it was this, right? We're taking pride back from corporate America, and returning home, returning to our roots, and returning to, trying to create a sacred space where that embodied, the love and care that our ancestors put into, our people and our youth. And our people needed some reminding and guiding back to that home. And so this space was created last year. It was beautiful. Mulani was there, right? Were you there? Yes. There was a ball at the end, and just seeing all of these beautiful young Black and brown queer trans youth just doing their thing, and just so much joy. But folks had issue with the idea of reparations. So we had white folks, our white allies, pay a donation to, as part of reparations, and also to pay our performers, and to provide a free space for Black and brown folks to celebrate each other and to feel safe and to feel joy. And to have that connection with community and with each other, especially during the height of the pandemic. This year it's Taking Black Pride Part 2, and this Saturday, it's happening this Saturday. And folks from our own community, elevated it as reverse racism, brought it up to the commission, the LGBTQ commission, and NAACP. And just it caused a lot of issues. And now we're receiving threats from white supremacists, we're receiving threats from white gay men, from cis folks in our own community. And we're having to try to figure out how we are going to keep our people safe, especially our performers, everyone who's attending, since we've received so many threats and so many messages from white folks, even from across the country, stating that they will show up, and also having Fox News broadcast this out, and having local news outlets basically, invite white supremacist groups to come to our event. And it's scary, and just the increased violence and transmisogynist noir and anti-Black violence, and it's also so quick how people forget about the anti-Blackness, that the issues, right, over the past year and a half, how quick folks forget now that we're reopening, and just, it was, back to business as usual for the rest of the general public. So I would say that True Meaning of Pride it's a mixture of things that's stopping us from creating those spaces and being safe in those spaces, because we aren't safe anywhere. But I'll see y'all there on Saturday.
Thank you. This has been real and kind of magic we wanted to create, and hopefully create everywhere with our girls. As we wrap up, we have one closing question. Thank you for all the underlining why we need to keep our agenda connected to the Pride roots and where it has originated, especially as we just watched 150 anti-trans bills be introduced across the country in the US. My last question is, this is open to all. Moving forward, where should the movement for trans liberation prioritize our energy?
I can start. We need to prioritize the importance of fighting for sovereignty, not just sovereignty over our bodies, but sovereignty over the land. And we shouldn't be fighting to reduce harm. We should be fighting for bodily autonomy, and just sovereignty in general that connects all of our movements. And I would say, and lifting up folks that are still being, deeply impacted by criminalization, and that's all forms of criminalization, whether it's criminalization of sex work, drug use, poverty, forced migration, and a lot of that's it.
I'll jump in. Ngatupu kind of nailed it all, and I agree with every single thing that you're saying. I love the fact that we have so many national coalitions and groups really working on all of this work, and we can jump on board and we can figure out ways to help each other nationally. I'm located here on an island, so it's really difficult to hear and see what's going on in the rest of the world. Yet social media is our form that we get to hear and see. What's challenging me right now, and it hurts my heart, is that we still have a lot of deaths of our trans women. Specifically, I'll name our Black trans women, because I think the way how society sees our folks as disposable, and sometimes you'd see that the news don't even lift them up with honor and with respect. It it really breaks my heart. And I feel like it's happening every single year. And every year that we celebrate TDOR, Trans Day of Remembrance, and we have more and more trans women and more Black trans women being murdered and killed, I feel like we need to do something about this. Something needs to happen. And I don't know what it was, but there's several moments in my last year of pandemic, I realized the Black trans women in my life need to know how much I love them and care about them. And I went on this spree where I called every single person. I talked to people. I messaged folks on Facebook if I could. And I just wanted to let them know how much I love them and how much I appreciate all their voice and their existence and the work that they're doing. And then sent out a whole bunch of care packages from Hawaii because I really felt so hurt and broken that I couldn't do nothing, or these things are still happening. So to this day, you're right. We fight against so many other issues for healthcare and housing and employment. And some of these things are directly related, but I do feel that the way how trans panic is gone in many places, but not in every area. And I also see that our trans women, our Black trans women, are really still living in a place where they can be attacked and killed, and there will be no justice for their death. And I feel that that's horrible, and this I cannot. So yeah, that's why I feel we should move a lot of our work towards. Thank you.
I agree with Kathy in one sense of, I think our energy needs to move for ourselves and towards our own peoples, because I feel like a lot of our energy goes into fighting against other people's words or fighting against other people's actions. And I feel like when we prioritize, prioritize our love and care for each other, I think that goes so much farther than so many other ways. Even though I'm like, yes, let's go riot and like burn things down. But like at the same time, we have to care for ourselves and care for each other, the people that are around us. And so I think a lot of our energy we should prioritize into like caring, loving, giving, taking space, and like just like being. Because I mean, something that was brought up is just like, once you come out as trans, it's like you instantly have to be an activist. Like you instantly have to be this person in community that's like fighting for everyone. And it's like, we fought before and we continue to fight every day. Me walking down the street is still a fight. Like, so other people need to do the work for us as well. And so I think the liberation of trans people, like we just have to keep moving and like keep loving each other and keep caring for each other more, because I see so many times like there's still this idea of like trans medicalism that people are trying to push, this idea of like trans, like you have to be a specific type of trans person. And I think so many of those ideas we need to like say goodbye to, and just like really live in our beings and live in our space and like just take that that moment for ourselves.
Yeah, everyone has said, the big highlighted things that I would say. Definitely think we've got to prioritize keeping folks alive. And that means us having a holistic conversation around what violence is, right? We got to talk about the violence happening to Black trans women, to our Latina, Latinx trans siblings, and so many more. We've got to talk about domestic violence, intimate partner violence, because we often don't even get to that nuance of it. We also need to be talking about the psychological violence that leads to suicide, right? And psychological distress, because we don't talk about that violence nearly at all, and I think that's incumbent on all of us too. And largely because what does it matter if you pass all these pieces of legislation and people aren't here to partake of it, or haven't actually been protected so that they can live. I think the other thing too, of course, figuring out how we can decarcerate and abolish these systems that lock our people up. So ICE, prisons, on and on. And then it's about how we can, some of these institutions, I think, where we don't necessarily need to think about abolishing, but more what the reform looks like, particularly the educational system. I think one of the biggest issues and why we continue to see hate is we don't actually have our kind of community curriculums in our educational system. And so we have all this hate. Nobody is taught how to deepen their empathy within our educational system, right? And so because we have all that ignorance, people don't know anything about, the struggles of Black folks domestically and internationally. They don't know the fights for Indigenous folks domestically and internationally, right? They don't know the struggles of women and folks of different gender experiences and of queer folks. And because they don't have that ignorance, it's so easy for them to discard us, right? And so as we think about building the next generations up, it's about them having the real story, the fuller story that includes all of our voices being a part of that. So we need a stronger educational system. And then I think the other pieces too are us considering these mutual aid efforts and supporting trans-led and particularly trans of color-led organizations and initiatives as a means of reparations. And so if we could radically transform even our community, right, and model what it looks like for us to move away from these sprawling national organizations, often led by cis people and white people, to moving those resources into these community-led efforts that are often the first ones to be there to support people who need food, housing, healthcare, et cetera, then maybe we could signal to the rest of the world the kind of world we want to see. So those are just some of my rambling thoughts right now.
Can I add to that? When you said mutual aid efforts, ooh, it was a trigger for me. No. Yeah, just like we, Black and brown folks have been doing mutual aid. We didn't call it mutual aid. It was just like showing up and taking care of Auntie over there who needed some money and a ride to the doctor. Also, like the idea of harm reduction, right? Like we didn't call it harm reduction. It was what we had to do to take care of each other. And just how these efforts have been co-opted, and where it's just dropping off a bag of groceries with little to no interaction, no relationship building, there's no depth. And that's something like that's the opposite of what, trans folks have been doing around mutual aid, which is like we honor folks in their entirety, right? All of the things that make us who we are, right? Not just the being trans on Monday, being someone on Tuesday, honoring all of those things happening at once. And so I putting energy in those efforts, understanding that trans people are always present in every movement because we understand the importance and we see the connection and we see the importance of not leaving people behind. I do want to add the putting energy into like reframing gender, right, through an Indigenous lens, understanding that gender is more than just body parts. It's our connection to each other, our elders, our experiences that's tied to the land, our connection to everything, right? And honoring the relationship in between everything. Also, we need to pour energy into creating discomfort with the gender binary, so that we're not reintroducing a new identity, right, for the general public and running through the same campaign efforts that are extractive and take from our communities and create so much distrust. but pushing for messaging, not just with the organizations that we work under, but pushing for government to push out those messaging to create discomfort with the binary understanding that there's 7 billion genders and counting. Also, we need to not be so focused on campaigns and that call on our people to, build networks and then drop them at the end of the campaign, but focus on building relationships that have depth, right? And I would also say addressing the shame that's in our communities, specifically Pacifica communities. There's so much shame that because of colonization, and so much shame that leaves my people disempowered, leaves them, in the shadow of this API umbrella where we can't, we're, we know we have the tools to create our own agendas and to fight for, our own, I guess, policies that honor my people. But yeah, so I would say the shame is a big piece. Yeah. Thank you.
No, thank you. This is, wow. That's powerful. Beautiful. I want to say thank you so much for joining me today. The girls have talked, and I've learned so much from all y'all. And I just want to say thank you for taking the time out of your day and your busy month of Pride Month, and just having a conversation, a well-needed conversation. Hopefully, this is part one to a multitude of conversations to come. And I just want to say thank you. And yeah. Any last words? Anybody want to say anything? Wrap it up. Anything you want to give the girlies last minute?
Just gratitude for y'all.
Yeah, just keep having these conversations, building these spaces, because we got all the solutions. It's all in us. We just got to have it's all in me. Sorry, I had a moment, but no, but the solutions are all in us. We just got to have the spaces to build them. And so thank you for making this space.
I was on mute. Well, perfect. Well, that is great. I hope I see y'all soon.